At number 10 spot, we have the Palmer House Hotel. In Sauk Centre, Minnesota lies the Palmer House Hotel. This hotel stands on the grounds of the city's first hotel, named the Sauk Centre Hotel, which ended up burning down in June 1900. When the Palmer House was built the next year in 1901 by Christina and Ralph Palmer, it served as a shelter for distant travelers and a meeting place for many of the locals of the town. However, every single year there would be more and more reports of strange occurrences happening inside of the hotel. Guests and staff alike would initially notice cold spots associated with the feeling of dread, as well as doors closing on their own, but eventually various people would report disembodied voices and tugs from the ghost of a little boy seen running in the hallways. This place was investigated by American paranormal television series The Dead Files, and during the investigation, psychic medium Amy Allen confronted a dark presence attempting to take control of her physical being. The room with the most activity is said to be room 22, where this one lady says that she made contact with a ghost child named Thomas, but you can book any other rooms if you don't want to encounter a ghost. Your choice. At a number 9 spot, we have the Kensington Runestone. This slab of stone looking like straight out of the Bible was allegedly found somewhere in central Minnesota during 1898. It was found by Olaf Oman, who was a Swedish archaeologist who found it after removing a tree in his farm. The stone had Viking runes, and one of the texts read the year 1362, which ultimately suggested that Scandinavians arrived in North America 130 years before Christopher Columbus did in 1492. The text talks about a journey to discover the Vinland, which is considered to be North America, and considering it was found in Minnesota, it seems like they completed their task. So is this finally solid evidence to suggest that someone discovered America before Columbus? Well, not really. Many people believe this is a great big hoax, especially considering the fact that the family who discovered it had a book about runic scripts. And when more research was done, the language used inside of the stone was pretty modern. However, if this was true, this would be very groundbreaking news. At number 8 spot, we have Dead Man's Trail. The small town of Thief River Falls in northern Minnesota is known for two major rivers, the Red Lake and the Thief. These two rivers meet up within the town, and during the early years, it affected a lot of the development within the town. Many native tribes would battle for the land, with eventually the Ojibwa coming out on top and forcing the Dakota tribe out of the area. After years of conflict, this town eventually started to have more reports of the supernatural, with the most being reported during a hike in the Dead Man Trail. One story goes that the trail was being used as a hiding spot for a man wanted for murder, while another story talks about a Native American woman who was trying to escape from people chasing her. She ran as fast as she could, but her newborn baby would just slow her down, causing her to hide the baby beside the river. When she went back to get the infant, she discovered it had been carried away from the river. Hikers have reported witnessing her ghostly apparition hunting for her infant to this day. At number 7 spot, we have the Mounds Theater. Built in 1922, this theater was once used as a venue for live entertainment and silent movies. While it had many good moments, there are many accidents inside of the theater. However, there are no reported deaths inside. Eventually, it would get closed down in 1967, then reopened once again in 2001. This little mix of accidents with abandonment is the perfect recipe for ghosts to live in, and this is the case made by many staff and visitors of the theater. Late night workers and janitors have reported being physically grabbed by a ghost, and others report a ghost named Red who throws things at women, and also a young girl has been reported wearing a pink dress bouncing a ball on stage when no one else is around. At number 6 spot, we have the Lake Pepin Serpent. Here comes another iteration of the Loch Ness Monster that lurks to depths below the US. Introducing the Pepe Monster, or PP Monster, whatever floats your boat, but I guarantee this beast won't. As it's mentioned from the name, this beast is located in Lake Pepin, which is basically the border between the states of Wisconsin and Minnesota. This monster became more popular in the media after businessman Larry Nielsen offered a $50,000 reward for finding this creature. After years, no one has had solid evidence of the creature. But Larry himself is convinced it exists out there and only wants to pay the money to see the creature one last time again. This is because 11 years ago, before he put the bounty out, he spotted a quote 200 feet long and 2 feet high creature going upstream. In the hump of our list, we have the Wendigo. This devil of a creature is a well-known one to many, but many don't know that the first original sightings of the Wendigo happened in the state of Minnesota. Wendigos are said to be as tall as 15 feet and very slender-like. However, don't be deceived. Because because they are said to be very strong monsters that have a never-ending desire to eat and kill humans. The legend states that a person can become a Wendigo if they decide to take part in cannibalism or any other heinous acts of humanity. These bad deeds essentially turn you into this monster, and this creature can possess you and even turn you into one itself if the person is greedy or weak enough. There are multiple myths talking about what Wendigos look like, but majority of them describe them to look like an animal but very tall, with a skull as a head, long legs, and their whole body covered in hair and drenched in blood. They are also said to be very fast and have super hearing with an amazing sense of smell, and in some cases they are said to walk on water, but they're not Jesus, remember. So be very cautious next time you try to camp in the forests of Minnesota. At number 4 spot, we have Crazy Annie's Bridge. 95 miles out of Rochester, Minnesota is a bridge known as Crazy Annie's Bridge, and it's also said to be one of the most haunted bridges in all of America. According to hauntedhopeville.com, this bridge is located in Henderson, Minnesota on 270th Street, just in case you guys wanted to take a quick visit. But I guarantee that's probably not the best idea. This bridge in particular is said to be haunted by a mother named Annie, who was reportedly from the early 1900s. Story goes that Annie lived in the area during the time of World War I. She fell in love with a man and started a family with 3 kids. But eventually the man would end up going overseas to fight in the war. And unfortunately, after months, the man would never end up returning. This is when the woman would go insane and eventually take her 3 children and drown them in this nearby bridge. And ever since, it's said that you can hear the cries of all 3 children and even the mother on the bridge if you decide to go on it in the middle of the night. Number 3, Hibbing High School. Hibbing High in Minnesota is not your typical average school building. Here, the staircases are marble, the railings are brass, and the art walls hold the whole almost medieval design together. The auditorium was modeled after the Capitol Theater, which is a sight in and itself. And when Bob Dylan was still Robert Zimmerman and a student at Hibbing High, he performed on the auditorium stage during a talent show. But even with star performers and a stunning design, it's a lone seat inside of the auditorium that attracts the most attention from everyone. The story goes that the first stage manager named Bill was employed at the school from 1927 to the late 1960s when he passed away after a chandelier fell on his head. Rumors soon arose that Bill really never left his favorite seat in the theater named J47. In the early 90s, Chuck Perry, who at the point had been stage manager since 1979, took a series of photographs of the auditorium after a woman reported feeling a cold chill as soon as she walked around J47 row. And lo and behold, one of the photographs taken with the Polaroid camera showed a man sitting in J47 wearing formal clothes and a top hat, and you could reportedly see right through him. So is this ghost? Who knows? At number 2 spot, we have the Hairy Man of Vergas Trail. In west central Minnesota, in a small town named Vergas, is the tale of the Hairy Man legend. And no, we're not talking about some random dad who happened to have a little too much hair on their back. This legend has existed in the region for the past 6 decades, and that's only because the reports are not done happening, and every single year it seems like there's a new experience with the Hairy Man of Vergas Trail. The man is described as being 8 feet tall, having long hair, smelling like complete garbage, and always walking barefoot. In other words, you would probably think this guy was a more civilized Bigfoot than anything else. Many believed he was just an old homeless man living in the woods and didn't want anyone near his land. However, the Hairy Man gained more notoriety after a man named Ken Zitzaw returned back from driving in the woods with dents in his car hood. He claimed it was the Hairy Man. Others have reported other attacks regarding the Hairy Man, but in the end, it's not confirmed if he really exists or not, or if he's just a figment of our imagination. At number 1 spot, we have the Glen Sheen Mansion. Minnesota's most notorious killing occurred at the Glen Sheen Mansion in Duluth. Elizabeth Condon, the heiress who inherited the home, was murdered in her bed in 1977. The body of her nurse was discovered on the Great Staircase, and the home, which is now held by the University of Minnesota Duluth, is said to be the most haunted in the state. After hours, employees have heard screaming, and some claim to see a white lady dressed in really dark clothing wandering throughout the entire mansion. At a number 10 spot, we have the Torch Lake Monster. This one is pretty much well known all over Michigan, but for those who don't know, the tale of the Torch Lake Monster dates back to the early 1960s and 70s. Obviously, it takes place in Torch Lake, which is located in North Michigan, and it also is the 2nd largest lake in the state. A fisherman and coach by the name of Dave Foley is credited with spotting the creature first and telling the stories of it since he worked by the lake for a while. Legend goes that the giant creature creature has a lizard's body, the head of a cat, one brown eye, and one blue eye, along with slimy green skin. The lake is approximately 285 feet deep, which makes what lies underneath much more scary and worrisome. Nighttime is when this creature is said to arise from the depths. At this time, many swimmers and boats go missing, only to wash ashore with no evidence of its demise. At a number 9 spot, we have the singing sands of Beat Gris. Located just past Lac La Belle, Michigan, is a beautiful white sandy beach known as Beat Gris. In a direct translation, this means gray beast, and that's because a large gray creature was said to have inhabited the area many years ago, but that's not even the story I'm going to talk about. Local legends claim that the pure white sand of the beach sings by pressing down your palms on it, or it barks when you strike it. The sound is said to be the voice of a Native American maiden who lost her lover when he drowned in the Great Lakes, and now she calls him on shore. The sand is said to lose its magical singing power when it's removed from the beach. Now visitors claim to hear the singing sounds, but as many try to bring the sound back home, they are met with years of unlimited bad luck, which lead many to bring it back to the beach to allow it to sing again. Other than sand that makes sounds, at a number 8 spot with the Belle Isle's Lady in White. In Detroit, Michigan, there's an island called Belle Isle. This 982-acre island is used for picnics, hikes, and home of the only marble lighthouse. Other than that, everything else on this island is shrouded in mystery and up for speculation. Legend of the island follows the story of a chief's daughter and a haunting bridge. The chief was concerned that his daughter's beauty would attract vast amounts of suitors, so to combat this, he made a deal with the snake goddess of the island. The chief asked the goddess to protect his daughter. The goddess would agree, but not for nothing. She would ask for the daughter to live out the rest of her days on the island to protect it, never being able to leave it. And to this day, the daughter is said to stay on this island and walk it, with many visitors reporting that she would try to lure them into the forest by telling them that she is looking for someone and just needs help. She supposedly takes her victims to the bridge to drown them, and it's said that if you go on this bridge and honk 3 times, she will appear just before your eyes. At number 7 spot with the Nain Rouge. It's said that since the city of Detroit was founded in Michigan, bad luck has befallen the area. This is all because of the devilish red imp known as the Nain Rouge had cursed the entire city. Local folklore suggests that the Detroit's founder, Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac, was warned by a fortune teller that he would come face to face with the Nain Rouge and to treat him with the utmost respect and attention. Except this information came straight this ear and right out the other, because when he finally met with this creature, he hit it with his crane and told it to stay out of his way. This is when the angry Nain Rouge cursed the city of Detroit and Cadillac. Shortly after this, Cadillac would lose his fortune and move back to France, but misfortune still occurred in the city. It's said that in all of the disastrous events that happened in Detroit, the Nain Rouge could be spotted just before all of them. For example, in 1763, 50 British soldiers perished from Native Americans, after which the Nain Rouge could be seen dancing in the aftermath in joy. Then in the surrender of the war in 1812, the Nain was blamed again for its presence. It had also been seen during Detroit's riots of 1967 and 1976's ice storm that caused electricity to go out for days. At a number 6 spot with the Masonic Temple. Currently standing as the largest Masonic temple in the world, it also stands as one of the most haunted places in all of Michigan. The temple, designed by George D. Mason, is an imposing Gothic structure at the corner of Bagg Street, later Temple Street, and 2nd Avenue across from Cass Park. The temple has over 1,000 rooms, secret stairways, and concealed passages, but unfortunately Mason would go a little too far in this construction where it would cause him to go bankrupt, eventually losing his wife in the process. His depression slowly kicked in, and then he would jump off the roof of this temple to his death. And to this day, security guards claim to see old George's ghost climbing those steps to the rooftop. Visitors also reported many noises such as doors and windows being slammed shut. They also see moving shadows and experience cold spots all around the area, all while feeling as if they're being watched by something. Right in the hub of our list, we have the Michigan Triangle. Well, guess Michigan has their own version of Bermuda's Devil Triangle, and it contains just as much unexplained phenomena as Bermuda. The triangle is from Manawak, Wisconsin to Ludington to Benton Harbor in Michigan. It was in early spring 1937 when Captain Donner was just managing his freighter ship called the O.S. McFarland through these icy waters. He was so tired, so he decided to go to sleep and asked for one of the crewmates to wake him up when they approached shore. As they did, they noticed his room was locked, so they looked around, but nothing. They then kicked the door down and found that he vanished with no signs whatsoever. Now the triangle claims the lives of many ships and planes just like Bermuda. People have also cited the O.S. McFarland, but as they try to get a closer look, it disappears into the waters. An odd thing about this place is when divers go to check the wreckages of ships and planes, they notice that everything is still intact. including the bodies of the deceased and the ship as a whole. This is by far the scariest triangle because there is no way around it other than land. So basically there's no point in traveling in Michigan's Great Lakes. At our number 4 spot is Hell's Bridge. Back in the early 1900s, an old deranged man named Elias Friss led a group of kids to the bridge and proceeded to murder each and every single one of them, slowly throwing them into the river below. Eventually he was caught and hung by the townspeople. Before he passed away, he made a confession claiming that he did this because he was possessed by the devil and they told him to do it. To this day, a lot of visitors to the bridge hear the screams and the cries from the children just before they pass away. People have also said that when they get home from this place, they find bruises on their body as if someone was reaching out to grab them or hit them. The worst part is that if you walk on this bridge at night, you can feel hands below you as if they're grabbing you from the river below. And at the end of the bridge, you might encounter Elias as a dark figure with glowing eyes, so you won't miss him in the dead of night. In more lesser known news, apparently you're able to sell your soul to the devil by meeting the devil in the middle of this bridge. I mean, it's called Hell's Bridge. What else did we expect? At our number 3 spot, we have the Dogman. The Dogman is described as a 7-foot tall, amber-eyed, bipedal, canine-like creature, and he has the head of a dog with the body and torso of a human. Ever since its original sighting in 1887, many more sightings were spotted all over Michigan. It's primarily spotted in the northwestern quadrant of the Lower Peninsula. Back to its original sighting back in 1887. This is when the Dogman was discovered by 2 lumberjacks who saw this creature in the distance. Things got a little more concerning when in 1937, Robert Forney was attacked by 5 wild dogs, describing that of one of the dogs allegedly stood up like a bipedal and was significantly larger than all the other dogs. This legend got more popular when disc jockey Steve Cook recorded a song called The Legend, which describes the Michigan's Dogman. Although the artist claims it was made for an April Fool's joke, this kickstarted the entire legend and sightings of the Dogman would only rise after the song was released. At a number 2 spot with Melonhead. Locals fear of humanoids called the Melonheads. First theorized in the 1970s, Melonheads are said to be completely bald with misshapen bulbous heads, deformed arms and legs, teeth like daggers, and luminous red eyes. Legend goes that Melonheads reside around Felt Mansion, which is home to Dora Felt, who is an American inventor. The Melonheads were said to be the children suffering from hydrocephalus, which causes your head to expand in some cases. They were located at the Junction Insane Asylum near the home, and it's said that they endured months and months of abuse, and that one day they decided to escape and run into the forest of Michigan, where they became animal-like and very feral. Many of these Melonheads are said to be looking for the doctor who failed to care for them in order to take his life. At a number 1 spot, we have Eloy Psychiatric Hospital. Located in Westland, Michigan, it was named after Detroit's postmaster Elois Davik. In 1839, it started as a poorhouse and a farm where the poor, the sick, and the needy would go for shelter and work. As time went on, the poorhouse transitioned into a psychiatric asylum and hospital. The buildings were self-sufficient, even having their own police. They were even one of the first hospitals in the world to use x-rays for diagnosis, so at least one good thing came out of here. At its peak, the place housed over 10,000 patients and over 2,000 staff members. After its closure in 1984, the hospital's abandoned grounds are said to have a few patients still left inside of it. Ghost patients, that is. There have been reports of people finding medical waste and other strange items. Some have reported finding jars containing human body parts, as well as documents outlining strange medical procedures. At number 10 spot, we have the Phantom Hitchhiker of Black Horse Lake. Near the city of Great Falls in Cascade County is a tale about a very notorious yet mysterious hitchhiker. If you happen to be coming off of Highway 87 going down Fort Benton, you may encounter a man on the side of the road at night. The area is very flat, so the man is very easy to spot when you're driving down this road. But unlike other people on the side of the roads, this person isn't looking to get a ride. Instead, once your car gets closer, the person is reported to roll over the hood of your car, across the windshield of the vehicle, as if they had been struck. As people begin to check on the man after they hit, they realize that they had hit nothing and the person they previously saw just disappeared. Over the years, there have been hundreds of reports that claim the same thing. They drive on this road, then they hit a man, only to find out it was nothing. Many believe this is a spirit of a Native American man who got struck and killed on this road. However, there's still no written document on it. At number 9 spot, we have Sacrifice Cliff. Overlooking Billings, Montana is Sacrifice Cliff. Despite the breathtaking views and scenic paths, this place has a very dark history attached to it. I mean, you probably already know that just by the name alone. Story goes that this cliff was once a peaceful meditation spot for the men of the Crow tribe. When they arrived here, they would be in complete silence, which showed the amount of respect they had for the area. However, a smallpox outbreak hit the area, causing the majority of the Crow tribe to perish within days. So one day, some of the boys returned to their homes from Sacrifice Cliff, only to discover that their entire village, including their family members, had all passed away from smallpox. They were so distraught they didn't see a point in living, so the boys decided to sacrifice themselves over this cliff. They would return back to the cliff with their horses. Then they would proceed to blindfold the horse and then ride off these very cliffs to their deaths. Although this is a very sad tale, if you decide to visit this place at night, you may hear the sound of these horses as if they're falling from the cliff to this day. At number 8 spot, we have Flathead Lake Monster. Lurking in Flathead Lake is said to be a monster that closely resembles the Loch Ness Monster. But hey, I swear every place has their own version of it, so here's Montana's version. For those who don't know, Flathead Lake is situated northeast Montana, just in case you guys want to avoid this place for your next swim. Many visit this lake for its unprecedented beauty, but since 1889, there's been reports coming in the boatloads about this creature. It's described as a very large eel-like creature that moves around like a snake and is as long as 40 feet. Many say its head is shaped like a bowling ball with multiple humps on its back. No wonder people think this is the Loch Ness Monster. It all started in 1889 when James C. Kerr was making rounds across the lake when he and his passengers discovered this creature. They described it as a whale-like from its sheer size alone. Ever since, there's been hundreds of sightings, but who really knows what lies underneath the depths of this lake? At number 7 spot, we have the Alberta Bear Theater. Located in Billings, Montana as well, is the famous Alberta Bear Theater. The theater was originally named the Fox Theater, but in 1987, the theater was renamed the Alberta Bear Theater in honor of his daughter Alberta. And this 1,400-seat theater was like any other. It was beautiful on the inside, which housed many professional touring companies and various performing artists. However, most visitors and workers claim to see the same two spirits lurking inside of the theater. This includes one male entity and one female. The male is described as wanting to be noticed, out of sorts, and very possessive, while the female is described as being very benign and very friendly. So let's talk about the guy. It's said that he is the spirit of a past employee who took his own life at the theater, which keeps him there trapped for eternity. So if you guys are looking to come to this theater, be on the lookout for these two. At number 6 spot, we have the Garnet Ghost Town in Coloma. Coloma, Montana is known as the Mystery Camp and is a ghost town located a few miles north of the better known Garnet Ghost Town on the Garnet Back County Byway. Very little is known about the Coloma settlement other than records indicating that it began in 1893 and experienced high gold mining activity starting in 1896. But by the 1940s, the mines had completely run out and the boom went bust. Eventually, the place would be emptied out and be left abandoned, and this is where many locals claim that the spirits ended up taking over the place. One state historian claims that once the sun sets in Garnet, the spirits of the town historic's residents come alive. Ellen Baumler, the Montana Historical Society's resident ghost whisperer and author, wrote, quote, "At midnight, people have heard ghostly fingers striking piano keys with the music floating across the empty buildings." She continued saying, quote, "Especially during the winter months, visitors see visions and hear unearthly noises. They cause no trouble, and anyone who visits the deserted town in the dead of winter should be prepared to meet them. They hide in the shadows, laugh in the wind, and come out when you least expect them." Right in the hub of our list, we have Bear Canyon. Mashed in between Chestnut Mountain and Mount Ellis is a beautiful stretch of land known as Bear Canyon. It's best known for its scenic hiking trail and is one of the most popular sites in the Bozeman area. And as we all know, a place that is beautiful on the outside is usually hiding something very dark on the inside. According to the Bozeman Paranormal Society, Bear Canyon is a place for spirits and not for humans. Sightings of the paranormal have been recorded since the late 1800s, which is ever since we started to settle inside of that piece of land. Many people have reported seeing a little girl who attempts to lead them off of the trail and into the woods. The little girl targets women, and for those who follow this girl, they will find themselves lost in the middle of the canyon. Others claim to have seen a strange mist on Bear Canyon Road, and many have gone missing when they enter inside of this strange mist. Number 4, Moss Mansion. Built in 1903, this red brick mansion was a turn-of-the-century home. It was 3 stories tall with 28 different rooms inside. The mansion was built for the Moss family, who treated it like their pride and their joy. Eventually, they would have around 6 children and 3 servants occupying the home. Years went by and all was good, until they suffered their first devastating loss. Just 5 years after the house was built, the youngest child named Virginia passed away while she was only 6 years old. Then 40 years later, in 1947, the dad, Preston B. Moss, passed away from a heart attack. Then soon after followed the wife, who passed away from a cerebral hemorrhage. Then 30 years later, another one of the sons named Melville passed away in 1984. This family ended up inhabiting the home from 1903 all the way until 1984. So best believe their deaths in the home have some sort of effect. The mansion has now been turned into a museum, and many visitors report various paranormal activity. Some include a ghostly female voice singing in the billiards room, and many staff members report a cool wind that goes up and around their bodies as they walk through the halls of the mansion. At number 3, we have Bannock Ghost Town. When gold was discovered along Grasshopper Creek in Bannock, Montana, the town went from a ghost town to a blooming community. Following the economic growth, a man named Henry Plummer became the sheriff of the town and the leader of a gang known as the Innocents. Plummer's gang is linked to over 100 murders and robberies, and during his brief time as sheriff, Plummer erected the Bannock Gallows, only to be hanged from them himself after being apprehended by a group of vigilantes. Bannock State Park still has the gallows, but many people who have visited claim that there's too much negative energy and supernatural activity in that specific area. Many claim to even see the spirit of Henry Plummer himself, as he's said to be still pleading for his life. At number 2 spot, we have Little Bighorn Battlefield. The Battle of Little Bighorn occurred on 1876 in the grassy plains of Bighorn River Valley and bluffs that exist around and along the Bighorn River. This was where General Custer and his men were brutally and completely defeated by the Sioux and Cheyenne warriors led by Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull. So best believe a place like this has a few restless spirits. I mean, every battlefield has one. You guys should know this. Visitors and employees have reported strange noises and even seeing full-fledged apparitions of soldiers after dark. Now, near the battlefield cemetery is where the most activity is said to happen. Many visitors claim to have been consumed by the feeling of deep sorrow and loss when they walk the cemetery grounds. And the stone house, which was built in 1894 for the cemetery's caretakers, is home to some of the most terrifying ghost stories. Some include lights aggressively flickering on and off until you leave the home, and others report seeing soldiers with missing limbs such as missing heads or legs, indicating some of the injuries they went through during the war. At number 1 spot, we have Dude Rancher Lodge. Built in 1940 by Annabelle and Percival Goen, the Dude Rancher Lodge was originally constructed using salvaged bricks from the old St. Vincent's Hospital. The couple ran the hotel together until 1962, where Percival passed away after a car accident. Annabelle continued to run the hotel on her own, though slowly her health began to decline. She lived in an apartment at the hotel and was cared for by her dedicated staff until eventually she was moved to a nursing home. Then on February 2nd, 1983, Annabelle passed away. Since her passing, this lodge has had too many supernatural activities to count. This includes televisions turning on and off while the housekeepers are cleaning the room, knocking on the doors when no one is on the other side, the sound of children running in the halls with no children being present, and a mysterious female voice was even caught on audio tape in the basement of the hotel. If you ever wanted to stay here, then try to avoid rooms 223, 224, and especially 226, which is said to be Annabelle's grandson's room, who took his own life in that room. Coming in at number 10 spot, we have Trollwood Park. In Fargo, North Dakota is the Trollwood Park. And at first glance, it really looks like your typical park, but that should all change once you realize it was built directly on top of a cemetery and former asylum. Obviously, those who built the park knew of this and already planned to move many of the bodies away, but it's confirmed that they didn't manage to take out all of them. As briefly mentioned, the Cass County Hospital was built on top of the park around 1895, and over the years, many people were left buried with no tombstones or even a marking of their location, which is why many remain in this park to this day. One notorious ghost that haunts the area is a woman wearing a blue dress that dances around the willow trees, and other visitors here claim that the ghosts here like to call out names in order to get people to lay them to rest finally. And oddly enough, in one instance, erosion caused one of the graves to resurface, causing one visitor to trip on real human bones. Imagine you're just playing in a playground only to stumble upon century-old human bones. At the number 9 spot with the Mini Washitu. The Dakota tribe has talked about a river monster named the Mini Washitu that has terrorized the Missouri River since the beginning of time. This creature is a 7 to 8 feet tall bipedal with bison-like fur, one eye like a cyclops, and a single horn above that one eye, and it also has a very spiny backbone. This creature wasn't known for its bloodthirsty tendencies or even its power. Instead, those who have seen the creature ended up just going crazy, and the only way for them to feel any sort of peace is death. One man wrote about this creature saying that he spotted it upstream in the Missouri River. He said it was red in color with hair like buffalo, but when he saw it, everything went dark. And the last thing he wrote was that he was walking home but when he arrived, he lost all sort of reason and passed away in a couple of minutes. Kinda sounds like the Netflix movie Bird Box, doesn't it? So best to keep your blindfolds with you in North Dakota. At a number 8 spot, we have the Stairway to Hell. Yup, if you're looking for a direct way to hell, this place might be for you. Jokes aside, located in Tegas, North Dakota is what many claim to be the Stairway to Hell. And with a claim like that, there must be something very terrifying about it. The town of Tegas is now completely abandoned, but when it opened up in the early 1900s, some crazy things happened here. There were rumors of an old Lutheran church that specialized in satanic worship, and some even claim that they did real human sacrifices here. Although the location of the church is not exactly known, what is known that it has been partially burned down, but there are still some who claim to have found it. They say the church is marked with an upside down cross at the front, and apparently everyone who has come down to the basement has never come back up. Now it has claimed so many lives that people started to think it was a stairway to hell. But hey, I guess the only way to find out about this is to walk it down yourself. Are you interested? At number 7 spot, we're the Sandhaven Sanatorium. The Sandhaven Sanatorium, otherwise known as a Sanatorium of Death, was built in 1911, and ever since, it has been a hot spot for paranormal investigators due to the dark history attached to the place. When the place was active, much of it was used to treat those with tuberculosis, and the issue is that the cure didn't come until 1946, which gave around 30 years of deaths due to this illness. Eventually, the need for the sanatorium died down, and the place ended up closing in 1989. After being repurchased, it was found that over 1,000 people passed away inside of the sanatorium, with the majority of them being in unmarked graves. To make matters worse, many satanic worshippers has made their way here to perform rituals using pentagrams and even sacrifice. Eventually, ghost adventurers made their way here as well, and even spoke with another spirit inside of the property. Others believe that patients of this place were badly mistreated, which could give more reason to all these hauntings. At a number 6 spot, we have Devil's Lake. When you get a name like this, you can't be surprised if anything bad happens to you here. The thing most people worry about when they step foot into this water is the Devil's Lake monster. The legend goes that centuries ago, many Siletz Indians vanished into the lake after their vessel was pulled down by giant tentacles. When the first Christian missionaries arrived in the Lincoln City area, local Native Americans told them of an octopus-like creature that appeared during periods of long drought. They even host a festival every single year for this creature, and back in those days, they used to sacrifice various animals into the lake. But obviously that's not done now. But as with any other sea monster, this creature still remains a huge mystery because in some accounts, people describe it as a Loch Ness monster lookalike, but in others, people lay claim that it resembles a large giant octopus or something like the Kraken. In the Humphrey list, we have White Lady Lane. Sometime in the early 20th century, in the town of Walhalla, there was a 16-year-old girl named Anna Story who met with a much older man named Samuel Khalil, who was out selling items in the marketplace. As soon as Samuel saw Anna, he fell deeply in love and went straight to the mother to ask for permission to be with her daughter. Since there was a huge age gap and the fact that the daughter was only 16 years old, the mother denied any sort of romantic relationship. However, she made an offer, which was to allow her to use all of Sam's items, and in a year's time, she would grant him the permission he wanted. Samuel agreed and gave the mother much of his valuable items. Then we fast forward a year, and Samuel comes back to the town of Walhalla to settle his deal and get the daughter. However, when he confronted Anna's mother, she still denied and wouldn't even give back the items she borrowed. So in a rage, Samuel pushed the mother aside and took the daughter, but there was an immediate struggle. So he grabbed his firearm, shot Anna point blank, killing her immediately. Sam would then try to end his own life and the mother's, but was unsuccessful and was later arrested. Now locals claim that Anna's spirit can be found on White Lady Lane, wearing the same white nightgown the night she was murdered. At number 4 spot, we have Chateau de Moore. The Chateau de Moore in Medora, North Dakota is a very historical site here. First, it was built by Marquis de Moore back in 1883 for a hunting lodge. He, his wife Medora, and their children lived in the house for many years with no issues, until one day Medora decided to go out traveling and never ended up returning back. Ever since that occasion, the family was terrorized by her spirit to the point when they had to move out of the hunting lodge altogether. And you can still visit the home, and much of the family's belongings are still found inside, which led many people to believe that Medora's spirit is still inside the home as well. This is because various visitors claim that a voice is telling them to get out of the house, while others recall that the house is filled with all sorts of unexplained cold spots. At a number 3 spot, we have the Stack Monster. In Bismarck, North Dakota lies the infamous Liberty Memorial Building. It was originally built in 1924 and is the oldest building on the Capitol grounds. More specifically, the library inside of the building is where many have had strange occurrences. This is because it's said that the library is haunted by a creature known as the Stack Monster. This monster would flicker lights, push people into harm's way, and overnight workers have claimed to hear very loud footsteps in the library when no one else is around. And these hauntings aren't specific to humans only. One time, the former director of the State Historical Society came into the library with his dog, only to see his dog's hair stand up, and it couldn't stop barking at a dark section of the library. At a number 2 spot, we have the NDSU campus. 2 NDSU residence halls are said to be haunted by different spirits. First, we have the ghost of a man who hung himself on a heating pipe within Sarah's Hall. As well, students have mentioned everything from lights going out on entire levels to sensing an odd presence nearby. The 2 areas with the most paranormal activity here are the basement and the 3rd floor. When people enter the basement of the Sarah's Hall, there have been numerous accounts of people who feel a strange feeling of panic and a triggering fight or flight response when they enter. On the other end, we have the Menard Hall, and legend states that one morning after a school dance, a janitor found the bodies of 2 students in the dance room. The case ended up going cold, which is kinda ironic since students who enter this hall report that there are far too many cold spots for it to be considered normal. At number 1 spot, we have the Riverside Cemetery. Opening in 1878, this cemetery, located alongside the Red River in South Fargo, is the largest and oldest cemetery in North Dakota, and this place is possibly the only cemetery where you may hear voices coming from the tombstones. As the number of paranormal occurrences increased at the cemetery, ghost hunters came in and have apparently recorded what sounds like knocking near the doors to several mausoleums. Other visitors have reported that they've seen bizarre, unexplained mist, orbs, and even different strange anomalies that appeared in photos and videos of the area. So if you ever want to see it, go search for a YouTube video of this place and you probably will see why it's haunted.
Starting out this countdown at number 10, Spirit Lake origins. Spirit Lake's name is said to be no mystery to those who live in Idaho. The story goes that years ago, a young Native American woman began a relationship with a brave man from a rival tribe. Unable to wed but determined to preserve their doomed love, the two tied their wrists together in symbolic marriage and jumped from a cliff into the lake where others tend to go to take their lives. It's said that on the moonlit nights you can see their shadowy spirits drifting across the lake in a phantom canoe, while mournful sounds fill the air as the Indian lovers seek release from their watery grave. Now here at number 9, Coyote and the Seven Devils. The Seven Devils form a portion of the Idaho-Oregon border, as well as line the most treasured river canyon called Hell's Canyon. The Nez Perce in particular had origin stories for nearly every feature of Idaho's diverse landscape, and the story of the Seven Devils is a unique one. Many years ago, there were 7 child-eating giant brothers who lived on the horizon. The people were terrified of these giants. They sent word to Coyote to help them defeat the giants and save their children. Coyote knew he couldn't battle 7 giants at once, so he dug massive holes in the earth and filled them with boiling liquid. As the giants were traveling east to snatch more children, they tripped into the holes and were trapped. Coyote was then able to transform the giants into stone, and he opened up a canyon at their feet to keep them from ever reaching the villages again. Coming in at number 8, Idaho doesn't exist. According to dozens of web pages which have genuinely called into question the very existence of Idaho as a physical location, the gem state simply doesn't exist, people say. People say it's down to 3 premises. Do you know anybody from Idaho? Have you ever been to Idaho? Do you know anyone who's ever been to Idaho? For most, the answer is no. Therefore, that's why people say Idaho doesn't exist. In fact, the general consensus is that Idaho was put on the map because cartographers needed a barrier to separate Utah from Canada and protect Montana from Washington, or vice versa. One explanation is that Idaho is a government-operated mind control vacuum. Another theory is that Idaho exists, but only as a state of mind. The whole debacle stirs up an abundance of very real philosophical arguments, but according to conspiracy logic, if you feel like you're living in Idaho right now, odds are it is simply the result of other conspiracies at work. Now personally, I don't believe this one, but there are some people who really full-heartedly believe it. Here at number 7, Charlie. The legend of Charlie the lake monster was first recorded in the early 1920s when railroad workers in McCall saw something unexplainable. In McCall, locals will tell you the tale of this creature. Charlie has been known as Slimy Slim and the Twilight Dragon of Payette Lake. Over the years, this serpent-like creature with a dragon head has made many appearances. Most think it's a log before it rises up to reveal its head. The last documented sighting came in 2002, but in 1954, the Payette Lake Star newspaper held a contest challenging readers to come up with a name for this elusive creature. The winner was Leigh Isle Henneferturi of Springfield, who came up with the name Charlie. Charlie continued to be spotted over the years, but it has been seen less and less frequently. It is reported to be between 10 and 50 feet long, brownish green, having a shell, and travels in serpent-like waves, rising and falling out of the water. But this gentle beast garners nothing but love from locals, who can't seem to recall an incident when Charlie attacked any of the lakeside city's residents. Very much like the Loch Ness Monster, except the Loch Ness Monster doesn't get as much love, and it seems like every place has its own version of a monster in a body of water. Number 6, Idaho is purposely drugging its residences. In 1947, it's said that Lewiston began adding fluoride into its water, as did the vast majority of United States cities, a practice which still exists today. Many suspected, however, that the addition of fluoride, which is approved as an easy way to cut down on widespread tooth decay, was in fact a large-scale attempt to underhandedly medicate Idaho's citizens, as well as a means of covering up the drastic lack of dental care provided for the state's working people who were poor. The dramatic decrease in childhood cavity levels recorded by 1950 supported the practice as a whole, but to this day, fluoride is still majorly opposed for a variety of reasons, including links to cancer and bone loss. Halfway at number 5, Lake Pend. This deep ocean-like lake in northern Idaho is said to be the perfect place for a monstrous beast to reside. It is said to be large, gray, and prehistoric in shape and size. Locals claim he is an unknown remnant of the Jurassic era that has managed to survive extinction, against all odds. Up until this point, the creature has remained a peaceful part of local lore, although many say that sightings of the sea creature were merely glimpses of Naval Training Station's top-secret submarine and technological testing. Coming in at number 4, Civic Theater. Before this building housed the Lewiston Civic Theater, it was a Methodist church built in 1904. In 1972, it became a theater, and in 1982, 2 women and 1 man all mysteriously disappeared from the theater on the same night. Both women were found unfortunately deceased off of the property 2 years later, suspected to be victims of a homicide. The man, however, was never found, and his mystery remains unsolved. Whether or not these 3 people haunt the building, there have been numerous sightings of other ghosts in the theater. Actors and theatergoers have seen apparitions of a red-haired man, a spectacled presence in the mailroom, and an elderly gentleman in the doorway. A ghost of a director has been seen in the balcony, and apparently a bride weaves herself through the seats. Here at number 3, Massacre Rocks Water Babies. This one comes from Pocatello, where you can hear the crying of babies late at night if you sit by the river alone in the dark. Many believe that it's the sound of babies that mothers were forced to take the lives of during a famine rather than watch them starve till they passed away. Some think that these babies grew gills and learned to survive. Depending on the story you hear, a water baby is said to be a spirit or monster traditionally seen as a Native American bred urban legend of small childlike creatures living in the waters of reservations around the western United States. It is rumored that they are tricksters whose main goal is to take the lives of others. Coming in at number 2, the Murder House. The Murder House of Boys was the site of the vicious passing of Preston Murr more than 30 years ago. After an argument broke out in the basement of the house between Murr and 2 men, Murr was shot and then hacked into pieces that were dumped 100 miles away from Brownlee Reservoir. His body parts surfaced and led investigators back to the house, which is allegedly still haunted today. Many former residents and visitors of the house have said that the basement has a very creepy feeling. Even footsteps from an invisible person have been heard. There are also legends about the house that say bloodstains appear and then disappear, and a woman in old-fashioned clothing has been seen looking out the window.
Now the rumor is that this 21-year-old man will forever haunt this home, and even non-believers believe it's created an urban legend.
Living there, I really don't feel that I was never afraid or felt that it was haunted, but there are so many stories. I mean, everybody's convinced that it is.
Now here at our number 1 spot, the Phantom Jogger of Canyon Hill. At Cadwell's Canyon Hill Cemetery, it's said that the ghosts don't like when you stare at their graves late at night. According to the legend, if you park between the 2 trees across the street from the entrance at midnight, you will see something quite terrifying. Make sure to turn your lights off though, so you can see the legless jogger when she knocks on your window. After you've completely freaked out and almost totally lost your mind, she leaves just as quickly as she came. Someone has said that they parked in this spot to investigate, but they did it at noon, so it wasn't very dark. They said they didn't see any ghosts, but that it was still very creepy.